there are houses that hold memories, and then there are houses that hold something else, something that breathes in the dark, that waits behind the walls, that never truly lets go of what it has claimed. One such house stands quietly on a tree-lined street in Amityville, Long Island. A 2.5-story Dutch colonial with distinctive quarter-moon windows that once looked out over the canal like unblinking eyes. For decades, it has been whispered about in hushed tones, turned into books, films, and nightmares. But before it was a story, it was a crime scene. And before it was a legend, it was real. November 13th, 1974. The night of silence. Just after 3 a.m., a rifle shattered the silence of a peaceful neighborhood. Inside 112 Ocean Avenue, a young man named Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr., 23 years old, walked from room to room, carrying a .35 caliber Marlin rifle. He started with his parents, 2 shots each, one for his father, one for his mother. Then his siblings, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John. All of them were asleep. All of them were shot in their beds. No signs of struggle. No one seemed to wake. 6 people dead in minutes. Neighbors reported nothing that night. No screaming, no alarms, no chaos. Only the family dog's frantic barking. By morning, Amityville would never be the same again. When police entered the house, they found the bodies neatly aligned, face down, as if arranged that way. The rifle casings glinted in the dim light. On one of the beds, a crucifix hung slightly askew, as if someone or something had rushed past it. Butch DeFeo would tell several stories. At first, he said a mob hitman killed his family. Then he claimed voices told him to do it. Later, he said his sister Dawn killed their siblings, and he shot her in rage. The versions changed. The result did not. He was convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. But that night, that was only the beginning. For a year after the murders, the house remained silent, unsold, as if waiting. Realtors lowered the price, but even discounts could not erase what had happened there. The rooms were cleaned, the carpets replaced, the smell of gunpowder long gone. Yet anyone who entered swore the air felt heavier. Finally, in December 1975, a young couple came to see it. George and Kathy Lutz. They had 3 children from Kathy's previous marriage, Daniel, Christopher, and Missy. To them, it was a dream home. 6 bedrooms, a boathouse, a fireplace, and a price they could actually afford. They knew what had happened there. Everyone in Long Island did. But they believed, perhaps hoped, that a tragedy does not stain walls forever. They moved in just before Christmas. 28 days later, they fled the house and never returned. According to the Lutz family, it began almost immediately. Cold spots in the rooms, doors that opened and closed on their own, unexplained noises from the basement, the attic, the walls. Every night, George Lutz woke up at exactly 3:15 a.m., the time of the DeFeo murders. He would find himself walking through the house in the dark, compelled by something he couldn't name. Sometimes he would stand before the boathouse, staring at the black water, feeling as if someone were standing just behind him. The family's dog, Harry, refused to go near the front door. One day, Kathy claimed to see a demonic face staring back at her from the fire. Another time, she said invisible hands embraced her, freezing cold. A small room painted red, hidden behind a panel in the basement, was discovered. It had not appeared on the house plans. To George, it smelled like death. a local priest, Father Ralph Pecoraro, was called to bless the home. He reported hearing a deep male voice say only 2 words, "Get out." When he left the house, he broke into chills and fever that lasted for days. And the slime appeared next, thick, green, and oozing from walls and keyholes. Windows shattered from inside. Doors were ripped from hinges. And then, the most terrifying, their daughter Missy began talking to an imaginary friend named Jody, who she said was a large pig with glowing red eyes. George once saw those same eyes staring at him from outside the window in the middle of the night. When he ran outside, there were hoof prints in the snow. The haunting grew bolder. A crucifix turned upside down. An unseen marching sound passed through the hallway. George began losing weight rapidly, his face growing gaunt, his eyes hollow. He chopped wood obsessively, saying the fire must never die. Kathy had vivid nightmares of the murders, where each child slept how they died. Once, she woke up screaming, saying she felt herself levitating off the bed, and always the same hour, 3:15 a.m. On the final night, they claimed the house erupted in chaos. Doors slammed, a foul stench filled the air. The children screamed as their beds lifted off the floor. A shadow moved up the stairs, darker than the dark around it. They ran. They left everything, food on plates, clothes in drawers, toys on the floor. The next morning, they never went back. When news of their story reached the media, the Amityville house transformed from crime scene to legend. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, the same couple later portrayed in the Conjuring films, visited the house in early 1976. They brought cameras, psychics, and recording devices. Lorraine reported an overwhelming sense of evil. One camera, left unattended, allegedly captured the image of a small boy peering from a doorway, though no children were present. To believers, it was one of the murdered DeFeo boys. But skeptics were quick to respond. Local police found no official reports from the Lutzes during their stay. Neighbors said they heard nothing unusual. And weather records revealed there had been no snowfall on the night George claimed to see hoof prints. The Lutz family eventually took a lie detector test and passed. But critics argued that fear can make believers of us all. A book followed in 1977, The Amityville Horror by J. Anson, claiming to be a true story. The film adaptation in 1979 turned the legend into a global phenomenon. Each retelling blurred the line between fact and fiction, until no one could say where one ended and the other began. The lawyer who had represented Ronald DeFeo Jr. once claimed the haunting story was concocted over wine between himself and the Lutzes as a way to make money. The Lutzes denied it, insisting the events were real, that they had been marked by the house, scarred by it. Meanwhile, the DeFeo case itself grew stranger. Ronald DeFeo Jr. changed his story multiple times, sometimes claiming possession, sometimes blaming unseen forces. In one interview, he said, "Once you live in that house, it never leaves you." Even after the property changed owners, its address later altered to 108 Ocean Avenue, visitors continued to show up, photographing the facade, whispering prayers, daring to stare into the windows that once looked like eyes. Most of those who lived there afterward reported nothing unusual. No footsteps, no cold spots, no voices. The house, it seemed, had gone quiet. But perhaps the evil wasn't gone. Perhaps it had simply found new ways to survive. Through books, through film, through fear itself, The Amityville case has been studied by psychologists, criminologists, and skeptics alike. Some believe the Lutz family's experiences were born from stress and suggestion. They moved into a murder house, fully aware of its history. Every creak, every draft, every sound at 3:15 a.m. might have been amplified by imagination. Others argue the trauma of that space, the residual energy of 6 brutal deaths, could manifest in ways science cannot yet measure. After all, can horror cling to a place? Can emotion become a haunting? The human mind fills darkness with meaning, and sometimes that meaning becomes real enough to touch. The Amityville story sits at that intersection, where crime meets legend, where fear becomes folklore. It is a reminder that truth is not always what we see, but what we believe. Decades have passed. The house still stands on Ocean Avenue, though its famous eye windows were replaced to discourage sightseers. The canal remains calm, the lawn immaculate, the exterior painted bright and welcoming. To an ordinary passerby, it is just another expensive Long Island home. But the stories linger. Tourists still drive by slowly, hoping to glimpse something. Paranormal investigators still point to it as one of the most infamous haunted houses in the world. And those who grew up with the films still feel a chill when they hear the name Amityville, a quiet street, a peaceful town, and a house that became a synonym for horror. So what was the truth? In the end, no one knows. There were no verified photographs of ghosts, no proven recordings of voices. Only the word of a family who swore they experienced something evil. But 6 people were murdered there. That part is fact. And maybe that's all it takes. Maybe the horror is not supernatural at all, but human. Ronald DeFeo Jr. died in prison in 2021, after nearly half a century behind bars. He never gave one consistent explanation. He was a man haunted by guilt, by madness, or by something he couldn't name. And if you believe the stories, the house remembers him. The Amityville Horror became a brand. Books, sequels, remakes, documentaries, countless retellings. Each one changed small details, adding new terrors, new myths. But deep beneath the pop culture surface, the true core remained. A family slaughtered in their sleep. Another family fleeing in terror less than a year later. And a nation caught between disbelief and fascination. Why does this story endure? Because it touches something primal in us. The fear that home, the place meant to protect us, can turn against us. That the walls around us may remember every scream, every act of violence, every drop of blood. And perhaps that's why the Amityville house is still so terrifying. Because the most chilling horror stories are not about ghosts. They're about what people do, and what their memories leave behind. Imagine it now. Night settles over Long Island. The canal reflects the moonlight like a blade. Wind moves through the trees, whispering through the leaves that frame the old house. Inside, light seeps beneath the door frames, faint and yellow. Everything is quiet. The rooms are empty. But if you stand long enough, you might swear you hear something faint. A floorboard creak, a soft breath, a voice whispering from the upstairs hall. Maybe it's the house remembering. Maybe it's the echo of 6 souls who never woke from their sleep. Or maybe it's just the story itself, retelling itself again and again, because some stories never die. They linger. They wait. And when the clock strikes 3:15 a.m., the house on Ocean Avenue remembers.